everyone, and welcome back to the Cora's Quilts YouTube channel. This video is the second in our three-part series talking about the Tri-Rex ruler pair and how to use them to cut fabric out for your triangle and square and your half rectangle triangle blocks. Today's video is going to focus just on assembling the triangle and square blocks using that larger center triangle and the left and right side triangles. So if you need a refresher on how to cut these pieces out, you can click on the link in the upper right-hand corner. Also, links to everything we're talking about or using in this video can be found down below in the video description box. Let's take a look at the triangle and square blocks. Alright, starting out with the three triangle pieces from our last video, we're going to attach the skinny triangles to the left and right sides of the wider triangle to form our triangle and square block. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you start on the left side or the right side. The little bit of overlapping fabric here at the tip of the triangle is going to be buried in your seam allowance, so you're not going to see it. And so just to put this block together, we'll take our background triangle or the wider triangle and we'll place our skinnier triangle right sides together with the triangle. Now, usually when we're sewing with one or more triangle pieces, we'll have to take the tip and kind of guesstimate about how far the two places should overlap in order to maintain our 1/4 inch seam allowance. But that little notch we took the time to cut on the skinnier triangle, you can see it right there on the tip, that little notch, when we put these two triangles right sides together, that little notch is going to line up perfectly with the bottom of the triangle. So it's showing us exactly where our pieces should be lined up so that when we go to press them open, we're maintaining that 1/4 inch seam allowance here at the tip of the triangle and down here at the sides. Now, I'm not much of a pinner, but I do take the time to pin these triangle and square units as I'm sewing them, usually down here on the notched side, just to make sure it stays exactly where I want it to as I am sewing it through my machine. Once I've sewn my 1/4 inch seam, then I will press my blocks towards those skinnier triangles. Just because I find that they seem to lay flatter and behave better when they're pressed this way. If I had tried to press the seam open or press the seam towards the center triangle instead, the blocks seem to kind of get a little bumpy here instead of laying nice and flat. And plus, pressing away from the center is going to reduce a bit of that seam allowance, that bulk that will build up in your seam allowance when it will come time to put this block together with its neighbors. So when I'm writing patterns and designing blocks, I'm always trying to think about how each individual unit is going to interact with its neighbors. And then I make sure while I'm putting all of my individual pieces together that I'm putting them together in a way that they'll behave nicely when I press them and they'll play nicely with their neighboring blocks when it comes time to assemble my quilt top. I do as much as I can to kind of reduce that bulk buildup in the seam allowances just so I get a nice flat quilt top. I think it's worth mentioning again that when I'm piecing these more complex units that will have several pieces of fabric coming together to meet in a point, I really prefer piecing with this 80 weight Deco Bob cottonized polyester thread. Whew! And it's from Wonderfill. And the thread is much finer than your typical 50 weight cotton thread. So it really reduces the bulk that you're having to wrangle when you're pressing these units and when you're trying to attach these units to their neighbors. Again, it helps reduce all of that bulk buildup in your seam allowances. This thread is polyester, but it's cottonized, so it's treated to have the strength and stability of a cotton thread, but with hardly any of the fluff and the fuzz that tends to build up in our machines and on our sewing tables as we're working with cotton thread on larger projects. And the final bonus, because the thread is a thinner weight, my bobbin can hold much, much more yardage at once than the heavier weighted thread. So that means less stops to change the bobbin and more uninterrupted sewing time. So that's always a bonus for me. All right, once you have attached and pressed all of the triangles to the first side of your center triangle unit, you'll go back and do the same thing to attach the remaining triangles to the opposite side. And again, all you're doing is lining up that notch here with the bottom of the block and making sure that your sewing edge is nice and aligned. And again, I will take these blocks and I will press them outwards away from my center unit just to have a nice, crisp, flat block. Oops, lots of threads today. All right, so this wraps up our tutorial for the triangle and square block. They're really fun little blocks, and with the help of that Tri-Rex ruler pair, they're not any more difficult to put together than a traditional block with squares or rectangles. If you've enjoyed this and other Cora's Quilts tutorials, please consider hitting the subscribe button here on our YouTube channel. For more tips, tricks, and quilting tutorials, you can visit our website at www.corasquilts.com. Links for all the products we used or talked about here in this video can be found in the video description fields below, and thanks for stopping by. We'll see you soon.